Everyone, I am Ashwarya, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Madurai Sivagasi Nadar's Pioneer Meenakshi Women's College. In this video, I am going to present a video on Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. Let's see a brief introduction about the author. Samuel Beckett was an Irish novelist, dramatist, short story writer, theatre director, poet and literary translator. He is greatly influenced by famous writer James Joyce's literary style. He wrote in both French and English. He was born on April 13 in the country Ireland. Like his fellow Irish writers, Bernard Shaw, Oscar Wilde, W.B. Yeats, he also came from the Protestant Anglo-Irish background. At the age of 14, he went to the Portoria Royal School, where he studied Romances language at Trinity College. Later, he worked as a teacher of French at Trinity College. During the Second World War, he joined the resistance and was forced to flee to the French countryside. Towards the end of the war, there he worked as a volunteer for the Red Cross. Samuel Beckett produced 4 novels, 2 dramas, a collection of short stories, essays and art criticism in the late 1940s. His experiences during the Second World War is insecurity, confusion, exile, and all these things came to shape his writing. In his most famous work, the drama The Waiting for Godot, he examines the most basic foundation of our lives with a striking dark humor. The play The Waiting for Godot was originally written in French entitled En attendant Godot. Later he translated into English. In the play Waiting for Godot, Beckett addresses an essential question of existence in 2 acts. The original French version of the play, En attendant Godot, was first performed in Paris at the theatre The Babylon in 1953. At first, audiences were bored, confused and even angry by the play, but at the same time, some critics also disliked it, but few people recognized the play's revolutionary importances. After that, Waiting for Godot has been performed in many different ways around the world. Beckett was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1969. Among his most well-known plays are Waiting for Godot, Endgame, Crab's Last Day, and Happy Days. And these plays are often considered to be the remarkable examples of the theatre of absurd, of which Beckett was a master and pioneer. The next thing is Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot is an absurd play which belonged to the tradition of the theatre of absurd, and it is unconventional in not depicting any dramatic conflicts. In the play, practically nothing happens, no development is to be found, there is no beginning and no end. The entire action boils down in an absurd settings of the countryside road with the 2 tramps. The one is Vladimir and the other one is Estrogan, who simply idle away their time just waiting for a Godot about whom they have only the vague ideas. Okay, now let's see the characters. These are the characters of the play: Estrogan, Vladimir, Pozzo, Lucky, Boy, Godot. Let's see one by one. The first character is Estrogan. Estrogan is one of the protagonists and he is a commoner and one who lives in a ditch where he regularly beaten. He is unable to recall anything except what Vladimir tells him, and he always depends on Vladimir to provide him with informations. He is impatient with Vladimir and he frequently wishes to leave him, but that is prevented from doing because his need for Vladimir. In the play, he suggested to Vladimir that they should hang themselves in order to pass the time. Here in this play, Estrogan has been compared to a body without an intellect, which Vladimir is to provide the intellect to Estrogan. The next character is Vladimir. Vladimir is another protagonist in the play. He is as poor as Estrogan, but he remembers most of the things that happens to him. He is often not sure if his memory is real or not. The reason why Vladimir is friendly to Estrogan is that Estrogen gives him the opportunity to remember the things that happened to him in the past. It is because of Vladimir that Estrogen waits with him throughout the play for the arrival of Lord Godot. The next character is Pozzo. So Lucky. So Lucky is a Pozzo's slave, and he is chained to Pozzo with noose around his neck carrying Pozzo's luggage, and he is only permitted to speak twice in the play. In the second act, Lucky is mute. And the next character is Pozzo. Pozzo is the boss and the character one who takes care of Lucky, and he stops to chat with the two trunks so that he can have someone to talk. In the second act, Pozzo goes blind and needs someone's help like Estrogen. He also cannot remember the people he meet. The next character is Boy. The next character, the boy is the one who serves as Mr. Godot's personal servant, and in the play he conveys the message from Mr. Godot that he would not able to attend that day, but he would be arriving the following day. The last character is Godot. Godot, the man for whom Vladimir and Estrogen waits unendingly. Godot never appears in the play. His name and character are often thought to be refers to God. Let's see the detailed summary of Act 1. So, it is the evening on rural road with only one tree in sight. Estrogen attempts to remove his boot without success, and Vladimir enters to greet him. Estrogen informs Vladimir that he has been beaten and spent the night in the ditch. Estrogen struggles to remove his boot. Vladimir inquires if there is anything inside. Estrogen explains that he is familiar with the Gospels, and Vladimir tells him that he should become a poet due to his tattered clothing. Estrogen responds that he is, and Vladimir continues the story of the two thieves. Then Estrogen expresses his desire to leave, but Vladimir convinces him to stay as they are both waiting for the arrival of Godot. Neither of them have no idea when Godot will arrive or if they are in the right spot. It is later revealed that they have no idea what they originally requested from Godot. So Estrogen is fed up with the wait and proposes to hang himself from the tree. Vladimir and Estrogen both agrees to do this, although they are uncertain who should hang first, as they fear that if one dies, the other will be left alone. Ultimately, they decide it is more prudent to wait for Godot's arrival. Estrogen inquires as to whether they still have their rights, and Vladimir states that they have. He then claims to have heard something, but it appears to be an imaginary sound. Vladimir then provides Estrogen with a carrot. Next thing is, now Pozzo arrives with Lucky, who is wearing a rope around his neck and carrying a stool, a basket, bag and coat. He carries a whip to control Lucky, and Estrogen immediately mistakes Pozzo for Godot and causing Pozzo to become agitated. For several minutes, Pozzo ordered Lucky around, and Lucky obtained obedience by remaining silent and obedient. Pozzo orders Lucky to put down the stool and open the basket containing chicken, and he eat the chicken before throwing away the bones. After each commands, Lucky stand in a crouched position holding his bag and appear to be asleep. Estrogen and Vladimir then go on to observe Lucky, who is captivating them. Estrogen asks Lucky why he never put down his bag, but Lucky will not answer to Estrogen. Later, Estrogen then asks if he can eat the chicken bones, and Lucky tells him that they are technically Lucky's. In the end, Pozzo explains to them why Lucky had been carrying the bags all the time, and believing it was out of fear of being disposed of. As Pozzo explained why Lucky was carrying the bag, suddenly Lucky began to cry, and Estrogen went to comfort him. Only he receives a cruel slap from Lucky. Pozzo then informed them that he had been with Lucky for almost 60 years, and Vladimir was shocked at the behavior of Lucky, who had been such a loyal servant, and Pozzo explained that he could no longer tolerate Lucky's burden. Later, Vladimir explained that it was an abomination the way he had treated such a loyal servant. When Poso then gave a speech about the night sky and asked them how it went, and they told him that it went very well, and Poso was very pleased and offered to do something for Istrogan and Vladimir. So Istrogan asked him for 10 francs, but Vladimir told him not to say anything. Later, Poso asked him to dance. Poso asked to Lucky to dance, and then he asked him to think. Then later, Lucky danced for him, and when he was asked to do it again, he did a step for step. Okay. Then Istrogan did not like it, and almost when Istrogan tried to imitate Lucky, he almost fell while trying to do it. Thus, that they made him a lot of statements of religion or political doctrines that never came to pass. Finally, they tackled Lucky and pulled off his hat. At this point, he stopped talking, and his last words were unfinished. The men then spent some time trying to revive Lucky, and who finally woke up when they put the bags on his hands. Poso got up to leave, and he and Lucky left the scene. Finally, Vladimir and Istrogan went back to their seats and waited for Goro to show up. A little boy now came up, and he says he was sent by a Godot, and Vladimir, yes. So now Vladimir cuts him off and asks him if he recognizes him. The boy tells them that it is his first meeting them, and that Godot won't be able to show up today, but maybe tomorrow. He is sent away with instruction to tell Godot that he has seen them. Finally, the Act 1 ends with Istrogan and Vladimir talk about the previous evening events, and they decide to go, and neither of them gets up. The next one. Now let me explain the summary of the Act 2. In this act, the following day is the same as the day before, but Istrogan doesn't remember his boot or Lucky's hat. When Vladimir comes in, starts singing, then Istrogan gets irritated and he appears barefoot. They both admit they are lonely, but they think they are very happy when they are together. They keep on talking about the dead voices they are hearing, and Vladimir keeps yelling at them to shut it off. Eventually, they decide to start asking each other questions, and they manage to chat for a bit. They forget everything that happened the day before, including Pozo, Lucky, the fact that Istrogan waited to jump off the tree. When he tries on his boots, they lift him up for some reason, and he notices that the leaves on the tree has started to rustle, so it's definitely a spring. After a while, they stop talking and try to come up with something else to talk about. Vladimir found Lucky's hat and tried on it. They both tried to act like Pozo and Lucky again, but it didn't work out. Later, Istrogan left, but then he came back panting and saying that they were coming. Vladimir thought it was Gorod coming to save them, so Istrogan got scared and he hid himself behind a tree which was too small for him to hide. Now the Pozo and Lucky come in. Now Pozo is blind and Lucky is mute. Lucky stops when he notices the two men. Pozo runs into him. They both fall in pale on the ground, while Vladimir rejoices that reinforcement has come to help with the weight. Istrogan thinks Godot has arrived again, and Vladimir and Istrogan talk about how to help Pozo to get up from where he has fallen. Pozo offers to pay for the help by giving 100 francs. Istrogan says this is not enough, but Vladimir doesn't want to lift Pozo because that would leave him and Istrogan alone. Finally, he goes over to lift Pozo, but he cannot lift him. Istrogan wants to leave. Yes, Istrogan wants to leave, but Vladimir persuades him to help first, then he leaves. Vladimir and Istrogan try to help Pozo, but both fall and cannot get up. Pozo starts to speak again, but Vladimir kicks him in the face to make him stop. Finally, Pozo gets up and calls for help, and Istrogan and Vladimir help him up. He asks who they are and what time it is, and they cannot tell him. As Estrogen tries to wake up Lucky, he keeps him again start to shout abuse until he hurts his leg again. He sit down again and tries to remove his boot. Estrogen tells Pozo that his friend is uh, hurt, and Vladimir tells him to make Lucky dance for them or think for them. Now the Pozo explains that Lucky is mute, and when Vladimir asks him when he gets angry and tells them to stop bothering him with their questions about his time since he has no idea. He helps Lucky to get up and finally they leave. Now the Vladimir realizes that this is not true and that he will have no recollection of what has just happened by tomorrow. Estrogen forgets everything that has happened to him. The boy now show up again but has no recollection of meeting Estrogen and Vladimir. He tells them that this is his first meeting and it is the same conversation as before. Mr. Godot will not come again but surely come tomorrow. Vladimir wants the boy to remember that he has seen him. He calls out to him by you are sure you have seen me? You won't tell me tomorrow that you haven't seen me. Finally, they look at a tree and think of hanging themselves. Estrogen removes his belt and it breaks when he pulls on it and his trousers fall down. At the end of the play, they decided to leave but they didn't move. The next thing is the theme of the play. So, the Waiting for Godot is an existentialist play. It presents many themes of existentialism such as absurdity, nothingness, futility, uncertainty. So, one of the most obvious thing is to notice about the play is the level of absurdity. Here, the both are dressed in rag and do physical tricks and have pointless conversations. They wait forever for something to change. When it is obvious that Godot is not coming, they sometimes talk about hanging themselves or just walk away, but they never do anything. They know there is nothing they can do, but they do their best to pass the time. The inevitable conclusion is that human life is pointless. Beckett focuses on the ridiculous of human beings and shows how tragic and funny existentialist cries can be. The next significant theme of the play is meaningless of life. In this play, none of the characters has a meaningful purpose in life. The human was dumped into the world and abandoned by God. There is nothing to do with the situation except waiting, and this is not clear that waiting will be a solution to find a meaning. Here, both Vladimir and Estrogen wants to commit suicide because there is no meaning in life, but they could not. Again, there is no clear knowledge what will happen after death. This makes them suffer from the repetition of moments and meaningless life. This is the folly of seeking meaning. It represents a futility, folly of such a search for meaning in an inherently meaningless existence. Human beings are born without asking to be born and they die without seeking to die. The next theme is suffering. Suffering is a constant and fundamental part of human existence in the play Waiting for Godot. Every character suffers and suffer always with no seeming respite in sight. The hardship ranges from the physical to the mental, the minor to the extreme. It drives some men to find companionship, causes others to abuse their companions, and for still others lead to self-isolations. Here, the Vladimir and Estrogen suffers not for lack of happiness but lack of certainty, and it is worse to not know whether or not they are miserable than to be certain of their anguish. The next theme is nothingness. There is lot of waiting and talking and doing and going on in the play. Throughout the play, Vladimir keeps saying there is nothing to be done, nothing to do. He and Estrogen cannot seem to find anything to do. They end up talking about nothing at all, even talking about how they cannot think of anything to talk about to pass the time. The characters on the stage are bored and the audience also bored with this. The another important theme of Waiting for Godot is companion or relationship. Here Samuel Beckett's portraits different types of human relationships. There are four kinds of individuals in the play. Every character is a separate entity. Individually they refer something, but in a relationship they indicate something else. Here Vladimir's problems are mental and Estrogan's physical. Pozo and Lucky's are presented to show the two races of men. But when these individuals are put into relations, they perform an important role. There are three types of relationship in the play. The relationship between Estrogan and Vladimir, the relationship between Pozo and Lucky, relationship between Estrogan, Vladimir with Godot. Finally, Waiting for Godot is a play that has lot of different meanings and implications. It is an existentialist play, and also it makes fun of existentialist ideas. To tramps, it appears that everything has changed except they themselves. The only real changes is in the tree, on which a few leaves have now sprouted in the last 24 hours. Here, Vladimir and Estrogan are the same as they were in the first act. Estrogan boots and Lucky's hat have undergone a transformation. Finally, the play ends on a strange note of hope that the tramps would be able to come by a piece of hope with which to hang themselves the next day. Here I have included a few important quotes from the play. Nothing happens, nobody comes, nobody goes, it's awful. We wait, we are bored. No, don't protest, we are bored to death. There are no denying it good. A diversion comes along, what do? We let it go to waste. In an instant, all will vanish and we will be alone once more in the midst of nothingness. Tomorrow, when I wake or think I do, what shall I say of today? That with Estrogan, my friend, at this place, until the fall of night, I waited for Godot. Why are we here? That is the question. And we are blessed in this that we happen to know the answer yes. In this immense confusion, one thing alone is clear. We are waiting for Godot to come, and we are not saints, but we have kept for appointments. Yes. I hope that you will understand this play. Thank you.